Daemon Targaryen had everything the throne is supposed to require. Targaryen blood, closer to the crown than almost anyone alive. A dragon, a reputation so fearsome that entire cities surrendered rather than face him. Ambition sharp enough to cut through anyone standing in his way. And across an entire show built around the question of who deserves to rule, he never sits that throne. Not once. Everyone assumes the answer is simple. He's too violent, too reckless. The court doesn't trust him. And look, all of that's true. I'm not going to sit here and pretend it isn't, but none of it is the actual reason. The real answer is something I don't think people say out loud enough. And once you notice it, you genuinely can't unsee it in a single scene he's in for the rest of the show. Daemon never sat that throne because some part of him never actually believed he deserved to be sitting next to it either. He needed someone else to want him there first. And I don't think that's a coincidence or a character flaw the writers threw in for drama. I think it's the whole engine driving almost everything he does from the very first episode. Take yourself back to the start. Daemon isn't the heir. His older brother Viserys gets the crown, and Daemon gets to stand one step back and watch it happen for his entire life, without ever really being told why one of them mattered and the other one didn't. And here's the part that I think actually matters more than the succession itself. Nobody in that family sits him down and treats it like a decision that deserves an explanation. It's just assumed. He's simply, permanently, second, not because he's less capable, because by almost any measure in the show, he's more capable, sharper in a fight, more decisive, more willing to actually make the hard calls a ruler has to make. He's second because of the order he happened to be born in, which has nothing to do with who he is and everything to do with a coincidence he had zero say in. Now sit with what that actually does to a person, not over a bad year, but over decades, being told, quietly, every single day, that the one thing you might genuinely be built for is permanently off the table, for a reason you can't fix, earn, or argue your way past. And it doesn't stay quiet for long, because here's the moment that proves it isn't just neglect, it's active. When Daemon becomes too much of a problem for the court to comfortably manage, the family doesn't try to include him. They remove him. He gets married off to Lady Rhea Royce of the Vale, a woman he barely knows and openly can't stand, in a match arranged for exactly one reason: to ship him off to a cold, forgotten corner of the kingdom, as far from King's Landing and the throne as they can politely get away with sending him. Think about what that decision is actually saying out loud, if you strip away the political language around it. This isn't a family trying to find Daemon a match. It's a family solving a Daemon problem, the same way you'd solve any other inconvenience, by putting distance between it and the thing it might threaten. He isn't handed a role. He isn't handed responsibility. He's handed a wife he never chose and a title nobody with real power actually cares about. And everybody involved knows exactly what it's really for. It's not a marriage. It's exile with a wedding attached to it. And Daemon knows it too. He barely bothers hiding his contempt for the whole arrangement, for Rhea, for the performance of it, because that resentment isn't coming from nowhere. It's coming from watching, in the most literal way possible, his own family choose to remove him rather than make room for him. And that's not a one-time thing either. Watch what happens every other time Daemon gets close to real power. Because the Rhea Royce marriage is just the most obvious version of a pattern that runs through basically his whole life. He's made commander of the City Watch, and he's actually good at it. Genuinely reforms a corrupt, broken institution into something that works. And the second he starts looking competent in a way that matters, Viserys gets nervous and pulls him back in. He goes off and conquers the Stepstones, wins an actual war, years of real fighting, and comes home to a crown that barely wants to acknowledge it happened. Every time, it's the same shape. Prove yourself. Get a little more rope. And the second that rope looks like it might lead somewhere permanent, it gets pulled back. That's not a man being kept from power because he's dangerous. That's a man being kept perpetually almost trusted, which honestly might be worse than being denied outright. Because outright denial, you can rage against. Almost trust just quietly teaches you, over and over, that you're never quite going to be enough for the real thing. Which is what makes Rhaenyra so different. And I think this is the part almost nobody actually says clearly. Why does Daemon marry her, specifically? And why does it end up mattering so much more to him than it looks like on the surface? It's easy to read as ambition. Marry the heir, get closer to the crown, and sure, that's in there. But watch how he actually behaves with her compared to literally every other relationship in his life, including the one the family forced on him. With Rhaenyra, for maybe the only real stretch of his whole story, Daemon isn't performing danger or competence to earn a seat at the table. He's just there. Trusted, chosen, actively, by someone who actually holds power, instead of shipped off by a family that never fully decided he belonged. That's the real thing he's been chasing his entire life. And it was never the throne itself. The throne is just the symbol sitting on top of it. What he actually wants is to matter to the person who has it, to be wanted rather than tolerated, or worse, married off and quietly sent away. And that's why the ending makes sense in a way people usually miss. There are real moments across this story where Daemon is genuinely, seriously positioned to take the throne outright, by force, by circumstance, by simply being the most capable, most feared person in the room when it counts. And every single time, something in him hesitates, steps back, waits for permission that never quite comes, right at the exact moment claiming it would require nothing but his own will to do it. That's not weakness. Not really. It's a man who spent decades being told, implicitly, that the crown was never actually his to want on his own authority. And some part of him still believes that, even standing in a room where everyone else would follow him the second he reached out and took it, you can spend a lifetime proving people wrong about your competence. It's a completely different, much harder thing to unlearn the belief that you were never supposed to be first. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you Daemon is just a wounded guy who never got a fair shot, because the show doesn't let you believe that either, and it shouldn't. He's genuinely reckless with other people's lives, not just his own. He's cruel in ways that go way past anything a childhood slight could explain. How he treats Laenor, how violence is always his first instinct instead of his last, the body count that follows him around, without much remorse attached to it. Getting denied something you wanted doesn't automatically make you the hero of your own story. And Daemon spends plenty of this show being genuinely dangerous to the people standing closest to him. Not just his enemies, but even holding all of that at full weight, it's hard to trace his whole arc and not see the same wound sitting underneath almost everything he does. A man told, by the family whose entire job was to make him feel like he belonged, that he was permanently one step removed from the thing that mattered most. A man they married off and shipped away the second he became inconvenient. And who spent the rest of his life either trying to prove that judgment wrong through sheer force, or quietly, without even meaning to, making sure it stayed true. He never sat the Iron Throne alone. Not because Westeros wouldn't have followed him there, because some part of him was never entirely convinced he was allowed to ask for it in the first place. So what do you think? Did Daemon actually want that throne for himself? Or did he only ever want someone to hand it to him and mean it? Let me know down in the comments. And I'll see you on the next one.